All right, so welcome to class, everybody. We got feedback from our live people in class today that we're having a sort of low to middle energy day, so we'll just kind of roll with that. And I'm going to start out, I was going to do a little reading from the Tao Te Ching. So Tai Chi is a Chinese martial art, and there's a lot of Taoism that is kind of, just enmeshed because this is the culture that it comes from. So I'm going to do a little reading, and this is the version that I have. There's a lot of translations. So you may have something that is a little bit different or a lot different. And I'm actually this one, let me keep my page here. This one is, let's see if you can see that there. Is that backwards or forwards? Can you see that? Backwards?
It's forwards. I just can't see. If you can move it a little bit to your left, then we can see in the light. There, perfect.
John McDonald. I think John McDonald is the one that did the translation for this one. Some of the ones that you can definitely look up the Tao Te Ching online, and you can find a lot of different translation and versions, but some of them are going to be really different to the point where, like poetry, it's almost highly interpretable, and some of them are, better or worse, I guess, is what I want to say. But let's just start out with a little reading and then a meditation on that. And then you can kind of keep that in mind as I talk about alignment and relaxation. And I talk about kind of the excess and deficiency. So we'll just jump into that. And we'll start with some breaths as well. So just to kind of get grounded and centered. I'm sure you can hear me, but I'm just going to roll up a little bit closer here. And this is from in my book, it's I think whatever verses they are, 77 or 78 is where I'm starting from. The Tao of Heaven works in the world like the drawing of a bow. The top is bent downward, the bottom is bent up. The excess is taken from, and the deficient is given to. The Tao works to use the excess and gives to that which is depleted. The way of the people is to take from the depleted and give to those who already have an excess. Who is able to give to the needy from their excess? Only someone who is following the way of the Tao. This is why the master gives, expecting nothing in return. She does not dwell on her past accomplishments and does not glory in any praise. 78. I feel like that one deserves a little. Water is the softest and most yielding substance. Yet nothing is better than water for overcoming the hard and rigid, because nothing can compete with it. Everyone knows that the soft and yielding overcomes the rigid and hard, but few can put this knowledge into practice. Therefore, the master says, only he who is the lowest servant of the kingdom is worthy of becoming its ruler. He who is willing to tackle the most unpleasant tasks is the best ruler in the world. True sayings seem contradictory. And if you read through the Tao Te Ching, you'll find a lot of this talking about high and low, up and down, opposites. And we really practice that in Tai Chi. And we'll talk about developing a root in your stances. And so if I were to, if I want to pick up this ball, for example, first I'm up here, I'm going to bend down. If I want to push somebody, I've got to have somewhere to start from. If I just go from here, I don't have a lot of power. But if I'm more on this side and I come from here, I'm changing, right? So you have, and even in this room we have, these paintings aren't exactly the yin and yang. We need the little dots in. But if you've got the dark and the light should have a little bit of dark and the dark should have a little bit of light. And this is a lot of the principles in Tai Chi and in Taoism. So I just wanted to kind of open with that for some food for thought. And I think let's start with some warm-ups. I'm just gonna, you guys can do this standing or seated. And I'm just gonna kind of demonstrate starting here just so that you guys are seeing me do some different ways to warm up. So we'll start with warming up our neck a little bit. Gently. Breathing slowly and smoothly. Just kind of finding your comfortable range of motion. Keeping in mind that excess of deficiency. You can feel a little bit of a stretch, but don't go too far. Side to side. Remembering to breathe slowly, smoothly. And find a pace that's good for you. A little bit of shoulder rolls. Right side, left side. Just a little side bend, a little bit farther. Just kind of feel into your sides a little bit. You can let your arms follow. If you're standing, make sure that your feet are wide enough to feel balanced. This is kind of nice on a ball. Just getting into a little bit of a rocking, swaying. And if you wanted to, you could continue with that for the upper body. I'm going to stand up. And let's do some bigger arm circles. Remembering to keep your body loose and relaxed. Smooth, fluid motions, smooth, fluid breaths. We can protect our head and spiral to one side, palm up, protect the head, spiral to one side and palm up. Go ahead and repeat that a couple of times. Looking at your hands, changing, looking at your hands. And keep your hips tucked a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit more today about alignment and about Tai Gong. And just to kind of briefly explain that. So we want to be in kind of a neutral posture. And of course, everybody has a different frame. But in general, we all have some points at which we're feeling aligned and we're feeling neutral and like we're not fighting gravity. So, and for me, I've been learning a whole lot about this by working with physical therapists and learning about where I'm personally out of alignment and learning to actually, and you can do this if you have a full length mirror at home somewhere, you can actually do this where you stand in the mirror and you check kind of, you know, oh, visually, where are my shoulders? Are my shoulders kind of forward? Are my shoulders kind of a little too far back, or am I kind of somewhere in a happy medium? And another way, if you don't have a mirror to check that, is to feel, you know, especially as women, again, I'm focusing on a lot of these opening stretches because for us, we tend to, you know, kind of do this. And anybody who's seated for a long time, we tend to just kind of end up doing this. And so bringing it back to like hips and pelvis, which is where, this is where we're moving from. If we are, you know, arching the back a little bit like this, you know, we can think about opening the chest, but if we open the chest by arching the back, we end up creating tension in other places. So that's where we think about, if I'm, you know, if I'm moving something here, what's the chain reaction in my body? Is my whole body in alignment? And another principle is to start and stop movements at the same time. And when we do that, so kind of, for example, let's just do a really simple one. Just kind of shoulder width. And just with your breath, even, you can practice this timing. Breathe in. Palms together. Breathe out. Palms together. Breathe in. Palms are together. And breathe out. And as we go through, you can do this, you can practice this in the warm-ups, and then you can practice this as you're feeling good, as you're feeling confident about practicing our postures. So we'll just kind of, let me make sure I'm not throwing too many pieces at you here. So start and stop, that's something to think about, to be moving our joints, kind of this fluid, slow movement, right? Together. So there's this timing piece. Instead of feeling kind of jerky or robotic, there's this nice fluid flowing motion, right? And that's where we feel that rocking, that meditation, that feels better than, you know, like this piece by piece kind of robotic movement, right? So Tai Chi is very much about this smooth, fluid flowing stuff. And that comes with time, that comes with practice. Of course, the first time that we start something new and I'm teaching you, you know, the hands, where it feels a little bit of awkward. So a brief review here for cloud hands. You know, start your breath and your movement. Breathing out. Changing your hands. In breath. Starting together, stopping together. I'm going to give you guys a lot to think about today, a lot to consider. But when you're doing your practice, kind of pick one at a time to think about, or it can get a little bit overwhelming. So one time when you do a few repetitions, focus on your breath and your timing. And another time, focus on, where's my hand alignment? Are my hands in kind of the correct position? Top hand about your neck, bottom hand about your navel, right? And then we have, for cloud hands, this excess and deficiency. If I'm here, my hands are too close. If I'm out here, I'm off balance. So this nice, rounded, relaxed, elbows are relaxed. We don't want to be out to the sides, is going to create shoulder tension, right? When we're doing Tai Chi, even when we're pushing, our elbows are usually in near our body. We're not doing a whole lot of this. So And a reminder too for cloud hands, our footwork is that we're shifting and placing, shifting, placing. I'm going to move this lamp if this is a little dark here. See my feet okay. So shoulder width, shifting into one leg, stepping out. Everything is slow, smooth, gradual. Another metaphor that is in the Tao Te Ching is, I think, something along the lines of the old masters moved as though they were crossing a frozen winter stream. So if you think about going outside and walking on ice in Minnesota in the winter, I get tense just thinking about that. And I think that's what I tend to do, is I tend to tense up and sort of worry a little bit. We can kind of shake out a little bit and take a break from that. You know, I tend to worry and get a little bit tense. So what are the things I can do to avoid that? Because one of the things that we know is that if we have an impact, if we have a fall or a car crash, if we're tense, we meet that with much more resistance, right? There's actually way more damage if we tense up our bodies before a fall or before a crash. So it's hard to do when we're thinking about avoiding a problem. I don't want to fall. I'm thinking about falling on ice and I don't want to fall. Well, if I keep thinking about that, I'm going to make myself tense worrying about it. So what are the things that I could do? You know, well, sometimes we're walking in places where we don't have the opportunity to salt or grab poles or anything. But what we can do when we're walking on ice is we can kind of sink a little bit. We can bend our knees just like we do in Tai Chi. We can sink a little bit. And I'm going to just lift up here so that you guys can see a little bit. But Tai Gong, when we tuck the pelvis a little bit, we want to be in neutral. And when we talk about being in neutral, the problem, like I said before, is that oftentimes we are not in neutral when we go about our daily lives. We're overarched here or we're bent forward. So as far as a big picture, something for you to imagine, again, when you're doing the form is, you know, things don't have to be perfect, but is my back overly rounded or am I arched back? And coming from, you know, what I was taught, you're better off being a little bit rounded and having your pelvis a little bit over tucked. If you have to err on one side or the other, don't arch your back and poke out like this. And instead, thinking about bringing your hips and your rib cage together and having a little bit of tension. We talk about tension, but tension's not always bad. Sometimes tension holds us up. So if we think about, we want to tuck our pelvis a little bit and bring our pelvis and our rib cage together, then we're engaging our core. And, you know, if you think about fitness, you know, that's what everybody likes to focus on is, do I have core strength? If you are doing Tai Chi with your hips tucked in neutral or tucked under a little bit forward and your ribs are down, you're going to have a little bit more power than if you're like this, right? So again, if you have to err on one side or the other, check in, just do this, and it doesn't have to be huge, but tuck under just a little bit. You're going to feel more comfortable in your hips and your pelvis. You're not going to feel pain in your hip flexors. So that's just we're getting a little bit more today into some of these specific checkpoints for the body. And again, I want you to focus on, if this seems like a lot, that these are just a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and we're going to build gradually over time. And the more you practice, the more you can put these pieces together and it will get more fluid. So, okay. I feel like we've kind of hit upper body a little bit with what we're talking about. So let's kind of, I don't feel like we didn't really warm up lower body. So let's just go ahead, since we're talking about this, let's loosen up here. Side to side. And again, just stretch as much as feels good to you. Flow in some little wrist circles here to loosen up wrists and elbows and shoulders. Okay, do a few rotations each direction. Again, make sure that your feet are in a good place for you so that you feel solid. Do a few rotations each direction. And doing this, practicing finding your balance and feeling your weight shifting foot to foot. This is really stance practice too, even though our feet are in place. A little bit more, just loosen up. All right, our cloud hands stances are pretty easy. We're doing this side to side. It's more just that taking the time to make sure before we step that we're going slowly. When I step over, I'm going to place my toe, my heel, shift into this leg. Place my toe, place my heel, shift into this leg. Place the toe, the heel. Gently pour your weight like water in a glass from side to side. Lift, toe, heel, shift. Lift, toe, heel, shift. Lift, place your toe, place your heel, and shift. Okay? And let's even things out. Let's do a few more of those going the other way. Just arms loose and at your sides for now. Kind of put things together. And for cloud hands, your toes are pointed straight forward. All right, let's add the hands back in. All right, so we're gonna have a top hand, a bottom hand, about at navel height, about at neck height. And both of them are relaxed, fingers are loose. There's a little bit of a cup. I'll come a little bit closer here. There's a little bit of a cup and a roundness in my palms and in my arms. Okay. So checking, are your hips tucked under a little bit when you're doing this? Are you like this, or have you kind of tucked under and bent your knees slightly so that when you're shifting, you're not popping back out here. You're keeping your pelvis tucked. So just try that, thinking about your pelvis a couple of times, lifting and shifting side to side. Okay, so is my pelvis tucked under? And I feel a little bit of a stretch here because I sit pretty often. So you can practice that a little bit, keep your pelvis tucked. Okay, so all right. We're going to put things together now. For now, don't think too much about it. Just kind of mirror me. Remembering to breathe. Checking to see, are my hips tucked as I'm shifting my weight? And if they're not, just make that little adjustment. Changing the hands, breathing in, shifting and turning the waist. Checking and rechecking as you shift. Is my pelvis in neutral? Are my hips tucked under a little bit? And if you were headed one direction, head back the other way. And you can experiment with how big of a step you're taking. Are you more comfortable taking a slow, like a close, small step side to side? Or does it feel good to practice stepping out a little bit farther and then to shift, turn, and then when you place, kind of bring your legs a little closer together. So if you take a big step out, bring your legs a little bit closer together. Bigger step out, shifting and turning. Feet back together. Okay. Zoom is giving me an annoying little notification here. I want to just check in. How's that feeling? And are there any questions? Doing good so far? Okay, awesome. All right. Yeah, Zoom is giving me a little notification here about our time today. All right. So do you guys feel like you have enough from Cloud Hands to practice that on your own? Yeah? Okay, great. So that was a good little review for that. Let me see what else I wanted to cover today. Okay. So what we've covered in classes so far this month, we started with Golden Rooster, right? So you guys who have been here from the beginning, you guys have Golden Rooster. I'm just gonna show you again a couple times. And again, thinking about the pelvis tucked under, this really helps me to do that before I pick up a foot to check and see, am I in alignment? Shoulder, hip, ankle, and remembering that for this one, our supporting toe is turned out at a 45. So for Golden Rooster, we don't have both feet like this. We've got our supporting one turned out so that this hip is open. Okay. And again, no excess, no deficiency. Our elbows and our hands are relaxed. We're not out like this though. And definitely remember to breathe. If you're practicing Golden Rooster, we were talking about a core exercise. We have to do this with this. We have to tuck our pelvis under and keep our ribs down, and we have to engage our core to do this, to stay balanced. And again, remembering too that your Golden Rooster can just be here or here. It doesn't have to be here like mine. This is probably a more neutral Golden Rooster. Okay, so that's just a brief review of a couple that we've covered so far in previous classes. Golden Rooster stands on one leg, and you can practice those left and right. Stepping back. You're in a cat stance for this one. again, making sure as you're shifting your weight that you are keeping that pelvis tucked under a little bit, and you will feel much more powerful and you will feel that your core is engaged when you're doing that. So I'm going to keep that brief. I want to introduce something new today. I think that's all I'll do for review because we're running. Zoom is going to kick us out, I think. So let's do Repulse Monkey. This is a fun one. So toes are mostly forward. If you feel the need for your own comfort to turn out a toe slightly a little bit for this one, go ahead and do that. But our goal for Repulse Monkey is to have our toes pointed straight ahead if we can. And this one, so the feet for this are shoulder width, okay? And you can even do a little bit of a drag step for this. I think this is how I want to practice this to get started. So pelvis tucked under, right? Have you guys seen like I think at the Art Institute, they had the big Egyptian figures where they've got them, they're always like shifted back with one leg forward in their postures. This is what this reminds me of. But you're basically, feet are shoulder width, pointed forward, and you're just going to step back and shift. But I want you to really shift into your hips and keep your pelvis tucked for this one. So again, for the stepping, there's a couple ways we can do this. Lift up, toe to heel when you're stepping back, because we're going backwards, toe to heel. And I don't want you to do your feet like this on a board, but just kind of maintain that shoulder width. And if you need to do a little bit of a drag step as you come back, just to, you know, remind yourself that you're kind of keeping your toes in the same place, you can go ahead and do a little bit of a drag step too for this. So let's just practice. The stance for this one is really important in getting the benefits for like loosening some things in your hips. So, and I'm gonna see if I can tilt my cam down here just a little bit more for you. Get a little bit more of the floor. Yeah. So, Repulse Monkey, shift into one hip, step back, shift your weight, and you can really feel sinking into that hip, pick up. Maintain shoulder width, maintain your toes forward. So Repulse Monkey is one of those postures that would be really good if you had to push somebody way down a tight, narrow hallway, okay? So, and here's the arms for it. Still keeping my pelvis tucked. I'm doing things with my hands, but I'm focused on making sure my feet are in the right place. Let's do a few more of those. So, and one thing to remember is that when we start, the hand and the foot for Repulse Monkey are together on the same side, okay? So if I'm starting here, I'm stepping back with my left. And when I push, my right leg is forward. This backhand is about with your ear, but when you step back and you push, you come down and push from the chest. If you push from your chest, you're going to have power. If you try to push from your ear, that's not very powerful. So I'll do a couple from the side. I think that's going to help your viewpoint here. Shifting, keeping your pelvis tucked. This is where you're engaging your core. Push. And I'm feeling a nice stretch through here if I've got my legs all kind of lined up. And this one again, sticky feet on the carpet. Be careful not to overdo with your knees. If you might need to make a little bit of an adjustment with your stance, like I said before, make a little bit of an adjustment because you don't want to feel tension if your feet are sticking to the floor too much. Repulse monkey, like you're pushing somebody away down a hallway. Somebody's coming at you and you said, no, thanks. And again, if you're in a smaller area, you can do a change step if you don't have a lot of room to move around. All right, so okay, if we get kicked out of this Zoom meeting, I'm just going to split this into 2 recordings if they actually cut us off. Okay, so I'm going to pop back on because I don't want to leave you guys hanging. So pop back on with me if we get kicked out. Because this hasn't been our full time. So you guys can still hear me and everything, right? We're still good for now? Okay, so I want to break this down just again, because this one has really good